want to be involved in. So that's why, Doug, thank you for your leadership and your vision and just all the volunteers because we just want to, get Global Chamber to be even better. And that's where Ella and I were talking about, hey, let's do real estate. This is fun. And especially with the main speakers that we had before, import, export, supply chain, economic developers, it was just very powerful and a natural fit for us to say, let's just get this started. And with Anita, Davida, just everyone here, we just kept on building a community more and more. And it's good to see Chris again. Yeah, and this is what we want to do is just keep building on it. So Doug, I just want to thank you. And if you have anything or let Ellen kind of share the story with you about our guest speaker today, because I'm excited to learn more. We're always talking about global all around the world, but we sometimes forget from the US, Canada and Mexico are international. They're not part of the US, right? As much as some of our government wants to think sometimes. But that's the exciting part. And especially for the US, we do so much business with Canada and Mexico. It's exciting. But Doug, you want to say any couple words before maybe Ellen introduce the guests?
Absolutely. Uh, I appreciate you, Jim, very much. And when you saw that synergy between business and real estate and economic development and the connectivity between Renaissance Global and Global Chamber, I'm just really excited. You've been a member for quite a while. Your passion and your interest and how you help people is just so amazing and inspiring. It really is. And I've watched you in action both online and in person, and you are a force of nature. And so, whatever you need and want, I'm there. You've got me for life and in support of whatever you're doing. The fact that you're helping here and getting Global Chamber also into the mix, it means a lot. You started by getting a variety of people, including Ellen Sue, who I did not know involved with Global Chamber. And so, Ellen, thank you for your leadership. I'll turn it over to you to kind of take the next steps and make any opening comments. Ellen's been sick, unfortunately, so we haven't had a chance to really map out the next weeks and months for this meeting. So, so as we've been building people attending here, our goal is to continue to build that and get more of the membership involved in understanding the synergy between these three elements, the business, the real estate, and economic development. We see it. We see how it all works, and a lot of people see it, but not enough people see it. And so Ellen and I will be putting together programming with Jim's help to be able to bring more and more people to the table, ultimately, not to talk, but to do deals. And that's one of the great things about Jim and that he understands is that it's, if we do deals with trusted people and we build a platform that's trusted, that's a good feeling and a good result. And Ellen, you create a lot of great results, including that Vancouver event. What would you like to say in kicking things off today?
Thank you, Doug. Thank you, Jim. Well, I'm very honored and proud to have Steve the Cruz to be the speaker today, actually. But actually, all three, Doug, Jim, and Steve, were all the speakers at the October 5th event in Vancouver. And I've known Steve for a long time. He's based in Vancouver, Canada. And due to the event, I think Doug was also introduced to Steve through Jeff Pappas from Newmark, and that's how everything comes around. It seems like it's like everybody knows everybody. If you know someone, someone else knows the other person. That's how it all started. And then we had a great conversation with Steve yesterday, and he has graciously to accepted to be our speaker today to talk a little bit about what he does. But before he start, I just wanted to do a quick uh, introduction to Steve so everybody know what Steve is doing and also what he has done. Steve, he's the managing director for capital markets at Newmark Canada's Vancouver office, and he specialized in development land and investment sales, which includes low middle market business exits. With over a decade of experience and hundreds of millions of dollars of off-market and numerous confidential transactions, Steve offers exceptional depth of experience and value to his diverse clientele by prioritizing customers' centricities and also deal certainties and asset integrities. So his previous role includes executive vice president and co-founder for boutique commercial brokerage, as well as a top producing vice president at an international firm. He holds a CCIM designation as well as a prestigious RI designation from Real Estate Institute of British Columbia. He also completed a accredited CRE accelerator in Institute Financing Modeling and complemented by advancing training from REFM as well as specializing studies in artificial intelligence with Vanderbilt University. So as past president of CCM Western Canada chapter, he advanced excellence in investment analysis field and served on various advisory committees to the CCM Institute on topics such as artificial intelligence. His insight have been featured in leading publications such as Green Street, the Globe and Mail, and the Western Investor. And he is the sought-after speaker for panels, podcasts, and live stream. Let's give a welcome to Steve, and today he'll be discussing, give some market update in Canada, and also some of the tidbits and golden nuggets that he's seeing in the marketplace. Thank you, Steve. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Ellen, and thank you everybody for this time that you're dedicating. And I really appreciate the opportunity, Doug, James, and Ellen. It's a privilege to have everybody's attention. And I'm hoping in a few minutes when I'm done, everybody can say, "Oh, Canada." So I'm going to share my screen and I'll just sprint right in through this stuff. I've got a couple of reports I've put together that are extremely timely. And I'm happy to share with everyone at the end. Just reach out and I will send them to you directly, or we can distribute through the global platform here. So 1 second here. Okay. Okay, hopefully everyone can see the intent. I'm just going to narrow some things here. So where we are right now is this is an actual fact that Canada is the top real estate investment target market. And the way we are demonstrating this is if you are familiar with Green Street. If you're not, I highly recommend, and I can share their reports that make up the data behind this summary. But essentially, over the past consecutive, I believe, 6 months, Canada has increased its spread performance between the 10-year swaps on the US and Canada. So you can see your private market return premium here, public market return premium there. And the takeaway is that in an era of fairly low cap rate spreads on premium assets, international buyers can get similar NOI growth at a better entry yield after normalizing for spreads. That's the easiest way to understand this. And this is consistent outperformance month after month after month. And so the secret is out. There, we are starting to see green shoots on trophy assets locally. But I also wanted to highlight that this is a consistent performance in Canada. So since 2018, we've ranked top 3 in terms of FDI confidence. And again, I can share the source reports behind all of this if anyone would like to see. So really, pre-COVID and through COVID and after COVID, we have consistently performed at the very highest levels, as you can see here. So if you're interested in where the arbitrage is with these are obviously some of the easiest ways to enter the market and get a premium experience. I'll leave these to dive into later because I've got a lot more info. But the takeaway on this is that there are many ways to take advantage of this current situation. Some of the reasons these are very attractive, fundamentally, one of the biggest ones is our net debt to GDP. Canada is the lowest in the G7. And so that allows us to start to roll out debt and really fix some of the past behavior in terms of productivity and competitiveness and tax reform that will help international FDI consider Canada from a much more favorable lens, even though we are already outperforming. Again, I can dive into these with anyone if they would like to get more specific. Some other high-level takeaways: we have the most educated workforce in the world. We're number 2 for foreign direct investment confidence. Top 5 producers of 10 critical minerals, very topical conversation. And we're forecast to be the number 2 best country in the G20 for the next 5 years. They're all very topical. We have an elite team across asset classes across the country. And Greg, I know we've got some friends on this call here that know Greg as well. So he was contributing to this report with me as well. So happy to see more people there. Have a Green Street property. A bit of an echo there. Am I still echoing?
Sorry about
Okay,
that. That was
no
me.
problem. No problem. It's better now. So this is the most timely global property allocator report. I'm happy to share this. This will dive into obviously European different asset classes across the world, different countries, so we can actually get a sector understanding and asset by asset here and points specifically. So you can see here some of the Canadian ones. I do want to point out Newmark in Canada is dominant in the senior housing asset class as we look at it. And we led the Well Tower transaction with Amica recently for $4.6 billion. And that is closing shortly here. So we can speak more about these in just a little bit. I wanted to highlight that. And then the other very, very specific actionable insight that I wanted to bring to the group's consideration is there's just been a lot of movement and a lot of headlines. And this is something that cuts through the noise because this is a real actionable insight that has now taken hold as this budget has been approved by Parliament. So this essentially super deduction, what it is a 100% depreciation in year 1 of manufacturing real estate. And you can roll that forward if you don't claim all of it in year 1 up until end of year 2029. So the clock has started. And this is a game changer for many, many groups that are looking at nearshoring, friendshoring, or working in Canada with expanding operations. This is an incredible opportunity for people. This is going to show you, and it's almost, I have to zoom in. So this is the sectoral marginal effective tax rates versus the US, because we're obviously benchmarking at where most of this manufacturing will end up or its competitive advantage. And so after the deduction, this tiny blue line is the effective rate. So this is where it is today. This is where it is after the deduction. So we are minuscule in terms of where we were. So that's a pretty dramatic, obvious advantage that people can take advantage of right now. And obviously the newer the building, because you can't depreciate land, is in the advantage. So build to suit opportunities on manufacturing are taking hold right now at scale. And so what falls under these and how we can take advantage of them, there's obviously fine print, but there is a lot of stuff to go through. The main one being at 90% of the building floor space is used for manufacturing. So very specific there. But again, we're happy to talk about more of this in depth with anyone, and we will show this report to anyone who likes it. So I wanted to bring that forward to everyone. Let's see. So this is another interesting chart. This puts us in line with the rest of the G7, showing overall like how competitive this is going to make us from a global perspective, and is again another actionable insight to take advantage of right now because the clock is ticking. So that is the high level on the reports. I'm going to switch to a couple of things to highlight. The Bank of Canada has held firm today at 2.25% overnight. And so we are in firm neutral territory from a lending perspective. Here's today's 5 and 10. So we've obviously got some room to run on the arbitrage I was talking about earlier, but they are pricing in rate hikes by the end of 2026. So it is really highlights here. This is directly from the Government of Canada, the news release November 10th. The budget is a plan to enable 1 trillion in investments over the next 5 years. So in terms of what that will actually translate to, specifically to reform the economy and have it be more resilient to global shocks, will take hold in things like infrastructure. And infrastructure and productivity and competitiveness are directly tied to the delivery of housing. And so housing is directly tied to the need of employment and staffing for relocation or advantageous growth to have companies expand with confidence. So this is happening right now. And so it is a very, very powerful story to tell investors and to have international people look at Canada from a lens of stability and security and an actual advantage in terms of point of entry when you're looking at your investments. So those are, yeah.
I don't think we saw the Bank of Canada screen that you were supposed to show us. It was, yeah, it was at the previous screen. So just wanted to let you know. Thanks.
Let's see. Okay. I'm just trying to navigate this pane here. Let's see if I can bring this down. There we go. Is it, do you see the 5 and 10, Ellen?
Yes.
Okay, so this is, yeah, so up to the minute.
Yes.
And so this is where we are today. And you can see our performance has fluctuated. But the point being is that the arbitrage is still healthy, given the latest rate cut, which came in this morning. And there's a decent spread there. So I don't know if Ellen, did we see this screen?
No, we did not see that screen.
Oh, okay. So this is the Government of Canada actual announcement talking about the $1 trillion. So this is where we're sourcing our information from. And then this is further to that. This is based on the budget, tracing back where that trillion is getting deployed. And this is the infrastructure, productivity, and competitiveness in housing. So 280 billion in year one, moving out right now. So this is something that we're sourcing from. So to make that clear. So, and what I'll do now is, as you can see behind me, sort of with the reflection, it's still pretty early here in Vancouver, but I'm going to go sector by sector with some high level updates here. What you're looking at is one of the world's best performing office markets. And so our AAA office product is rapidly running out. We have a vacancy that hovers between 6 and 9% right now on AAA. However, in order to deliver new AAA, we need net rates starting with an 8 or a very high 7. So 75 net, 80 net. And so we are currently in the very, very high 40s, sometimes scraping 50s. And it takes us about 7 years to get one of those approved and out of the ground and handing keys over. Oh, look at that. Technology. What a wonderful world. All the AI you could wish for and didn't want. With that, yeah, look at that. I'm learning so much. It's a two-way street here. So with the office, what this means is that we have an undersupply crisis in the making. As the AAA is filling up, the downward pressure on the B and C class is already taking hold. We've removed some B and C stock. And so as that return to office really takes hold, which it has, as we can demonstrate by the vacancy, our general vacancy overall in Vancouver is around 13%. So we really are global leaders on office out here. So it's very, very healthy. So this return to downtown is a very, very good story. And with that, as I mentioned, right off the top, there are green shoots coming. And one of those green shoots last week, 2 weeks ago, Ponte Gadea has bought a building downtown for 1.2 billion. That's a AAA office called Post that they occupy and have a beautiful retail activation on. And it's a massive building, $1,000 a square foot at a 5 cap, direct off market, taken to 5 groups. And that is a signifier, because what it is telling us is that international capital is beating local institutional capital to the punch. They're moving off the sidelines, going direct. And again, QuadReal, the vendor, is a representative and investor on behalf of the BC Pension Plan, which is one of the world's biggest. So we are talking about private capital beating institutional capital at the highest level, and institutional capital being notified and saying, no, we're going to sit this one out, because there is no chance the BC Pension Plan executive group didn't circulate that and were able to make that decision at the executive board level. So they watched as all the other institutions sat out. So again, we have a neutral policy rate. We have favorable terms in the G7, and we have a moment currently, right now, where institutional capital that moves our markets is on the sidelines. So we are at hand, and someone has dropped the gauntlet, and the race is on. So the trophies are coming up for conversation. It is all direct, relationship based. By the time you hear about it, it's already gone. So that's where we are right now on the office side, and that's a really good story for North America, to see office trading again and to see big deals coming. In Toronto, they're just announced there is a new AAA tower that's coming, and that will house RBC. Has indicated they will take several 100,000 square feet to help spur that along. So already, and that's going to be 4 years, 5 years before you get keys. So, people are seeing the writing on the wall, and that's an institutional indication. So that's our office high-level overview. Quick note, Oceanic Plaza, which is I would call that a high B, mid B tower in downtown Vancouver, will trade. It's not public yet. It will trade at 6.65% cap rate in the range of 230 million. And so that would be, in reference, that's probably 200 meters from where I'm standing right now. So that's indicative of 6.65 and then a 5 cap on a trophy, right? So we're narrowing, because maybe 12 months ago that would have been an 8, and the trophy probably was about a 6. That's what DECA came in on for their purchase about 18 months ago. So it's on. Moving forward, I talked about seniors. They just did another massive one in Nanaimo. They're launching 1,000 units in Alberta. So please reach out if you have interest in seniors. There's active opportunity on the passive LP side for placement. The barrier to entry is extremely high as an operator. Unless you're in that field, COVID removed much of the competition. So the field is narrowed at the top. So they are cycling through secondary and tertiary assets and focusing on core prime. And so having these institutional operators spin off secondary and tertiary assets, that's the opportunity. But the operating of the actual asset requires provincial legislation, approval, and licenses and experience. So it's not as easy as it looks, but the outperformance is dramatic. And you'll see that in the Green Street report. That is one of the world's best performing assets, but it is a very, very difficult fruit to pick. So happy to talk about that with anyone who's interested. On the industrial side, we've got different stories happening. Ontario is more susceptible to manufacturing pressure from the US tariff situation. And they also have more access to land to deliver on some of the initiatives I mentioned on that manufacturing super boost. Here in BC, we are much more diversified, and we have a port. And so we're weathering that remarkably well. We are now reaching the very end of the supply of large 100,000 square plus industrial availability. So that will spur construction and delivery of new product shortly. We're not there yet, but what that does mean is it will put pressure on mid-bay consolidation. You'll see subleases get removed and vacancy tighten. We're still sitting at a 3% vacancy. So Vancouver, that's historically high. Again, neutral rate, historically high vacancy, signals of running out of supply. That's a good story to get in ahead of, especially on the manufacturing side. Retail in Canada, retail is fundamentally undersupplied compared to the US when you do a per square foot delivery on population per capita. So there's no catching up to that. Every time we put up one tower, there's one retail aspect to it. We do have delivery of malls, but the appetite on a lot of these is so massive that it probably will not be competitive from an FDI perspective coming in, because regularly there will be subject free offers and multiple offers with depth. We see that slowing down coming into 2026. That was a really, really hot story the past 18 months. Data centers, sort of like an interesting note in Canada, that we have nuclear capability depending on where you are, and we are ramping up access to power. So we have clear sites to 1,000 megawatt type projects. There's one that's announced in Alberta last week. So there will be appetite there for international collaboration. Obviously, many of those conversations are already happening. On our hotel sector, Vancouver is just a world leader on that story. We regularly have RevPARs over $300 per night and 85% occupancies, and the World Cup hasn't even started. Again, very, very hard asset to enter in terms of building, but they do come up for acquisition. So that's sort of, I'll touch on land. Land here in BC, we are at the bottom of the cycle. The most advantageous position is covered land, where you have income, hopefully covering costs and then above inflation. The ability to re-enter the market with product at a later date is going to be an incredible generational opportunity. What is happening now is the pig and the python that was for what we call condos or apartments has already delivered. And so the housing crisis on purchasing, all these deliveries that have come because of the cost of delivery, no one can afford because of their productivity. And so we're having a glut of condos on the market. So new stuff going in the ground has stopped. Pre-sales have stopped. The funding model has stopped. And so what that means, obviously, in the next few years is we will have a crisis of supply, because to deliver anything is a multi-year process. And I mean, even for a 100-unit wood frame stick project, you're looking at a 3 to 4 year process to get keys starting today. Forget concrete, that's 7 years. So on the condo delivery, there's a very good story that if you can get to market and purchase right at the bottom of the cycle with a covered land play, you're going to re-enter from a position of strength. Then secondly, rental, the pig and the python is here now. And so rents are falling. Multifamily cap rates are decompressing. And we are seeing a slowdown in those deliveries. The primary financing model with CMHC has now gone essentially par to conventional. So there's no advantage taking those lending vehicles. And so now we're seeing a slowdown on that dramatically. Same problem. If we're not having deliveries and rents are falling, no one's going to build. We're going to work through the inventory, re-enter the market, and it's going to be obviously very rewarding to the people who buy well. And this is true in most markets of Canada. We have seen a rapid increase in Alberta on acquisitions. There's still room to run there. That's a better entry point. But they do have more land, hence they're more susceptible to supply over delivery. So as that nuance, irons itself out, Toronto's got more problems. They do have more inventory to work through. So they're on a bit of a longer cycle, probably 24 to 36 months to move through their current inventory. But again, if you are a covered land play scenario, you will re-enter from a point of advantage. So that's the land high level. And I think we're at about the half-hour mark, and I can take a breath and see if anyone has questions at all. There's one, and you have a cat, so you definitely get to go first.
If you're a cat person, I'll reach out to you afterwards because I'm actually starting a side business designing toys for cats inspired by Radar, my blind cat. Okay, I have a couple questions for you. First one is, so I know that in Canada, there's something similar to our self-directed Roths in the US, wherein we can use that money to invest in real estate. Unfortunately, it cannot cross borders. But does your self-directed, whatever you guys call it, personal retirement account, do they allow people to invest in real estate in Canada using those funds?
Yeah, so there's something called a TFSA, so a tax-free savings account that can get bundled, and you've got 50 dentists coming in hard on an LP and stuff like that. So yeah, there's RSP roll-ups, and so there are various similar vehicles. What we don't have is 1041, and so that is in conversation now. We'll see if that comes through, but that would solve a lot of problems and bring us on par. But yeah, the short answer is yes, those vehicles do exist.
Okay, yeah, because I was very interested in investing actually in student housing many years ago, and was very disappointed to find
Student
out
housing
that I couldn't
is
use
an
my.
incredible asset class, and in
Yes.
Canada, again, chronically undersupplied because it is a derivative of housing in general. So it is more expensive to build. It's harder to access land, so the supply is chronically underdelivered.
It's location specific. Like you
Right.
can't go out to where there's nothing. It has to be infill, obviously. Okay, my
Right.
second question is this. Um, I'm imagining it would be with a larger down payment. However, will the Canadian banks lend to people from the US if they want to invest in real estate in Canada? Will
Yeah.
they
So
lend on those assets?
yeah, so Schedule One banks work with Schedule One banks in the U.S. Seamlessly. It really is more about your tax structure behind you and what that looks like, and specifically going in on specific assets. If they are commercial, they don't have the restrictions that residential do. And where it gets confusing is that people buy multifamily, which is treated as commercial here, not residential, and so it's exempt from some of the foreign buyer restrictions, which is good.
Yeah. Now, do you guys differentiate between 1 to 4 and 5 and up?
In terms of units, you mean?
Yeah, because here
Yes.
it's
Yeah.
considered
Yeah.
residential. If it's 1 to 4, you have to hit 5 for it
Yeah.
to be considered commercial.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. Same thing. Yeah.
Cool. Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. Anybody else? Fire away. Hi, Donna.
Hi, Steve. Thank you so much for your presentation and the information that you shared with us. I work with a company in Toronto in the retail sector. I've done site selection for 10 years. I don't know if you ever heard of Meltwich, but I help them with the Georgia market of expansion, but I'm doing other things as well. But I have a few questions for you. I heard you mention data centers. So in Atlanta, I'm in the Atlanta, Georgia market, and data centers are something that is very much so frowned upon. Like every time the word data center pops up, people are like, oh no, we don't want them in our communities. They take up too much power, too much water, just so many things. So can you kind of talk about if you're seeing those same issues in the Canada market when it comes to data centers and the feedback you all are getting about that?
Yeah, so we're not getting that pushback yet, simply because we are a laggard in delivery.
Okay.
So I'm sure we'll encounter the same problems. However, from an energy grid standpoint and from an access to power standpoint, we do have other capabilities to ramp up to accommodate.
Okay.
So right now, the infrastructure, and I talked about that a bit, that is what those billions and trillions are going toward, is to make sure that we can actually deliver on those. So case in point, You can Google 1,000 megawatt delivery Alberta. And so they literally have sight lines on that specifically outside of Calgary right now. In Ontario, there are four. I can't remember the acronym. There's too many acronyms in commercial real estate. Somebody should do something about that. But in Ontario, we have the small modular nuclear reactors. And so those are coming online. There's actually one online right now. And so these are going to be test cases that are being watched around the world, specifically for obviously these use cases. So short answer, no, we haven't had that, but it's more to do that we have deeper access to power depending on where we are. And I want to point out that in Canada, 95% of the population lives a 1 hour drive from the border. And the rest of Canada, which is 2.5 times the size of Texas, is empty. So we don't really have a problem hiding large structures it's a different point, right? So we just talking behind a mountain, so literally, right? So, but yeah, that's a high level there.
Okay, and then my next question is about triple office space. You were talking about that. Can you talk about some of the amenities that you all are putting? Because Atlanta is still kind of getting back to where they were in the office market because of COVID. Our office market did suffer a lot here. And we do have a lot of development coming with these new office buildings coming online, but I'm just curious to know more about the amenities that they're putting in these AAA office buildings.
Yeah, so the amenities are focused on experiential activation. So, for example, behind me, there's a building, and confidentially, there's a group coming in that will take 90,000 square feet. They are an oversubscribed high-end gym. So they would make Equinox look mid, to use the parlance. So just an incredible operator. Every location they have is oversubscribed. People can't get enough of it. And on a normal day, I sit here at the Bentall Center, which is a Blackstone asset run by Hudson Pacific. And so the activation they have here is nonstop. There are park benches with live music, and there's underground walkways that connect to rapid transit. And so there are pop-ups. There's Christmas. We had a tenant breakfast for, I don't know, 1,300 people the other day. So there's HEPA filters, there's gym memberships, there's encouraging vouchers on scooters. We actually have an electric scooter dock. This is like very timely. This company, Lime, expanded across Vancouver in the past 12 months. And it is incredible. And it's not the same story as the scooters like in Los Angeles and Miami, where you get turf wars and guys with trucks picking up. They actually have docks. You can only park at the dock. No one, and you get dinged if you leave it behind. So you can't just leave it. And so they're very specific. And we also have like really world-class bike lanes. So it's transforming, they call it micro mobility. And so having access to micro mobility and specifically targeting experiential activation for younger generation office workers, because the reality is the work from home thing is a luxury. Nobody gets to be VP in your pajamas, right? So it's about actually meeting people, water cooler activation, ideation, having those kinds of connectivity. So you got to do that for Gen Z, Gen Y, and whichever letters I'm forgetting. And so having people back in the space, full contact, that's what they're focusing on the tenant activation. Because really, you're not going to get a guy in his 50s coming down for eggs and bacon at 7 a.m., right? He's got a beautiful kitchen at home, right? He had his electric car coming in, dock. He's got his parking space from 15 years ago. It's going to be the people in the different companies in the lobby who think free food is awesome, right? So,
Right.
and they're winning with that. That is a winning story, right? And so that's gone remarkably well. And so we're seeing the different differentiator there is the B and C class. You have to work harder on that. right? Because you got lower ceilings, less light penetration, different, not a lot of active space. And if you're in a B and C class and you've got, the old layouts, we are seeing layouts change. So less of the bullpen, cacophony of absolute noise with sound booths, and no, it's much more like private offices, private work, but social activation. And so the third space, so to speak, of the tenants in place becomes the lobby, becomes the patios, becomes the rooftop, becomes the sponsored night at the local pub next door, and the landlords are taking an interest in that cross collaboration because it strengthens their tenant base, right? If these companies can grow within their own spaces, they're going to need more space. So it's a really good story, and we do know, especially that the landlords are really motivated to do this because these COVID deals that got signed are coming up. So if you haven't been paying attention on that, like, okay, you're 12 months out, and if you haven't given your tenant a really good reason to stay, it doesn't matter what the rates are. They got it. The number one issue always, and you can forget AI about this, it's always people. If you're losing your best people, like you're not going to be in business. You're not going to take space. So that's sort of the perspective from the best landlords that we see operating. Did that
Yeah,
help?
that's a good. No, it did. Thank you. I was gonna say, yeah, here I beat up on landlords with my tenants, especially on renewals of getting free rent and having them fix stuff, getting new TI and everything right now in the
Yeah,
market. So I
get
completely
it
get
all.
that. Yeah, one last question because I'll have you here all day.
Yeah, the sun's not even up. I got like
Yeah.
I'm already here. I
I
got
will
nowhere
have
to
you
go.
here all day. We'll talk offline. I was gonna ask, with the B2C, are you seeing adaptive reuse or anything going on with those buildings right now? Because here in Atlanta, a lot of these loans got called due. And a lot of people are trying to like sell their office buildings and I'm seeing stuff starting to be converted, adaptive reuse into like multifamily and just other different asset types. So I was just curious, are you all seeing that in your market as well?
Yeah, isolated cases. There are grants available in Calgary and some various municipalities across Canada that will help do the heavy lifting on that.
Okay.
Again, it is location specific. If your floor plates are too big, your light penetration doesn't work, so you end up needing too much hallway. You got to put HVAC in, and so it really it's also a tale of building code, and that cost of delivery is insane. So for some context, if we're going to deliver a new build office, a nice A, we're looking well over $1,000 buildable square foot cost,
Mm,
just cost. So
right.
to retrofit a B or C class to have it meet any sort of competitive advantage, unless you're buying at below replacement cost, that's a really, really tough number to make sense in this market.
Hmm.
In some of the other markets, it can work, but again, it is isolated. Canada, after Vancouver, is much, much colder. And so you need much, much more parking. And so the older buildings have less parking, or sometimes they're not as well located to amenities. So you're kind of like fixing something, but you can't really move it. Right? It's just somewhere where like the action is, right? That neighborhood may have been kind of left behind, where the newer AAAs have consolidated around. In Edmonton, we have the Ice District, where that's where the stadium is and all the energy is and the new towers are. So people want to be around there. So if you're fixing something that's more than a 15-minute walk, you're kind of hoping you're going to capture some of that energy. So it's a bit of a reach. So that said, the post that I talked about, the 1.2 billion to Ponte Gadea, that was adaptive reuse. That
Mm,
was an actual like shining example of it. So there's appetite for the assets. Canada has some of the highest, strictest building codes. But the problem is we get in Vancouver, there's 23 planning departments across 23 municipalities.
mm,
And sometimes we have our own building codes in different cities with provincial and federal over top. So just like in California has their own challenges where you've got a line item for how much you think you'll get sued. So we have ours that inflict delivery. So that's sort of the long answer to your question. They're highly desirable. They're beautiful. They don't really work right now because of the costs.
Makes sense. Thank you so much.
Yeah. I'm not going to call you the cat lady, Anita.
I've been called worse. I'm a middle child. Um, Quick question. I know that in the residential real estate world, there are referral agreements, cross borders. Does the same thing exist in the commercial real estate world? If you get a referral, for example, from Donna in the US, are you guys able to split commissions?
Yeah, no, we do it all day. So in Newmark, we have 8 brokers in Vancouver, 8 in Toronto, and we collaborate constantly. I was on the phone this morning with one of our guys in Dubai that we're working on an asset on. So yeah, we're always collaborating and cross company. Like first and foremost, it's about the client's best interest. So if we can bring somebody in to do a better job, that's the goal. Simple and end of story. But yes, we're happy to co-broke, we're happy to refer, we're happy to do the best job possible for the client.
Fantastic. Thanks.
Stephanie,
Hi there. How are you doing? Thank you so
good.
much.
How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for sharing your information today. It was very beneficial. I have a quick
Thank you.
question. I jumped on a little later. You may have spoken to this already. Are you all open to investment firms that will help finance or help? Many times people go to the bank for financing, and sometimes there's other investors that can help finance. Are you all open to that there in
Yeah,
Canada?
yeah. Again, it depends on your tax structure. If you're set up on cross-border investing, so you just need to be aware of that first before offering to jump in on something. And so, because yes, there's always opportunity. There's people always looking for capital. And there is an arbitrage opportunity. If you have US dollars coming behind Canadian assets, there's a good story there. But I would just hesitate and urge you to talk to your tax setup because if you are putting money behind an entity without having some knowledge to speak about that, it's going to be a short conversation.
Right. It's not for me. I know of a company that does that and they do global. They do that globally. So just wanted
It
to
does.
know.
It happens all day. So
Yes.
I'm sure there's a path, but again, it's client specific. So yeah, we're
Okay.
happy to take your money, Stephanie. Okay.
Yes.
Where
Thanks a
are you
lot.
calling from? Where
I'm
or
calling
where are
from
you?
Frisco, Texas.
Frisco, Texas. Awesome. Thank you
Yes.
so much.
Thank you.
Hi, Carrie.
Hi, Steve. Yeah, so I was just wondering what are some of the common myths that you need to dispel, say from like global manufacturers that haven't done business in Canada before, or their perceptions that you feel like you kind of keep having to correct, and like what are your core data points to kind of address those maybe misconceptions or hesitancies that companies have?
Yeah, I think the some of the honestly the biggest lift is that there just isn't a lot of access to knowledge at a ground level and the differentiation between markets and like how we interact between the markets. Canada is not we're very friendly, just not with each other. So, and what I mean by that is our interprovincial system is in a state right now where we're evolving to be much more competitive. So, for example, this is a real example, and this blows manufacturers' minds. So, we have one of the world's most productive ports here in Vancouver, and many times operators will land a product, they'll have a warehouse, and they will build a warehouse in Alberta and they will truck or train merchandise for storage in Alberta to sell it back to Vancouver because warehouse land and cost of production, everything is dramatically cheaper in Alberta. And that actually becomes a solution because we're so, it's hard to explain just how land scarce we are here. So when coming up with solutions, it really is about getting access to the right information and understanding what that client's needs are, because we have multiple major rail ports in Winnipeg that service all of North America. We have points of entry that have all 6 rail service lines, right, that we can point to, but we need to understand how to get a deep dive with them. Some other misconceptions is that there are I talked about the population being close to the border, but the serviceable populations that are in some of these other areas, Edmonton, these are 1 million people, right? So these are cities that are, NHL, they have, every concert circuit around the world. They're major metropolises with full service to international service providers that they may not be aware of. And so they have working populations, they have affordable housing, they have different initiatives. And then secondly, the political changes that can happen can be super dramatic. So for example, Alberta is an energy driven province that primarily services Texas. And so having an understanding of how that affects, what they're looking to do and where they want to place in access to those is dramatically different to a manufacturer going into Ontario. And then Ontario, your access to land, you can get like industrial land for 50,000 an acre, or you can get it at 6 million an acre. And we're talking a distance of 8 hours driving in each direction. They really got to get rid of this thumbs up thing. I don't know who's doing that. That's funny. But yeah, so I guess like the best way to answer that is there's no blanket response. That's why I hit everybody at the beginning with just like some really great indicative initiatives that are coming, because it really needs to be tailor suited to have such a large land expanse available and so many different access points that can service so many different needs. And we have access to fresh water, we have at multiple points. And so we have hydro, we have nuclear, we have coal, we have oil. So there's no limit to like what we can do. It's about not a lot of people want to do the work, to be honest, because we are small. And so finding the right people is the biggest challenge. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. And just as an example, we're working with a company that was a sophisticated global manufacturer, and looking at an operation in North America, we suggested looking at a region of Canada. And it was just interesting to hear them say, like, oh, their perception was that they would have to pay a higher percentage of wages and benefits, and that there would be a major additional HR cost. And so an exercise then was to say, okay, that's their assumption or their perception. How do we, get enough data to try to provide make sure that they're making an informed decision at that point? And so there's, also the factor of there's more government paid benefits to employees, so that takes the burden off of the employer to a degree. And then also doing a wage analysis to compare what the wages are between the actual areas, because there could be a wage savings. And so just trying to get to some of those core data points so that, if we have a client that just has some hang up in their head, that we can provide more backup that could help them make more informed decisions, and see that as a benefit of Canada, and not a hurdle for them.
Yeah, I think specifically speaking to that, again, 10 provinces, 10 different tax rates on top of the federal. So it really is about understanding where we're going and what we're going to do there, because that there are opportunities. And I guess because what you're describing is most people think of Canada, I won't say this, but they think of it as like socialism. And it really is like socialism light, where we've got like almost like targeted policies to make up for the socialism that doesn't work. right? So, for example, this manufacturing super boost, instead of changing blanket policy, it's a surgical amount to take advantage of specifically in an industry anywhere you can make it work in Canada. And that's much more of the classic approach in Canada, where they're like, instead of solving the huge problem, here's a pile of money that we're going to try this for the next 18 months, right? And if you can get it and make it go, fantastic. And then it's gone. So that, and hopefully someday we learn a bit more, but again, these are targeted opportunities as opposed to the state of Florida can hang a sign and say, you know what, no taxes, come all, and like no one talks about home insurance, right? And so again, these data points, like you mentioned, the salaries are higher, but that socialism light does a lot of heavy lifting that is invisible because we take it for granted. And so we're not looking, we don't have the data point on your side to say, oh, well, we don't pay for that, right? We don't pay for that, right? So unfortunately, it is a deeper dive. But again, as I think the manufacturing super boost demonstrates, the benefits can be outsized, right? Comparatively for those who do the work, if that makes sense.
Thank you, Steve, and thank you, Carrie. I think we're at the top of the hour, so I
That went
have to bring
fast.
Steve. I have to bring you back. I think everybody have more questions for you, and also want to get a deeper dive in terms of the Canadian market. Really appreciate providing an overview and also your presentation in terms of what's happening in Canada. And right now is the time to invest, as Steve had mentioned. All the great points that he pointed out earlier. Of course, we can do a deeper dive next year. But we'll be bringing Steve back to get more details. And for those of you who's interested in getting to know Steve, you don't mind putting your LinkedIn on the chat. And then other than that, thank you so much for your presentation, and thank you everybody for your question. These are all really great questions, and I'll hand it over back to Doug and James if you have anything to say. Thank you.
I just say this is fantastic, very timely, and we hope in the calendar for Global Chamber in the real estate is to share what topics we're going to cover so people can share with other people and attend what you would like to go to. So we hope going forward, we're going to have all the guest speakers kind of lined up as much as we can. That's why working with Doug and Ellen. So we're just very excited for the future of what we're going to do in Global Chamber in the real estate part. But Doug, any final words?
Great presentation, great information, valuable information. Very excited. Thank you, Ellen, for bringing Steve to the table, and look forward to working with Steve. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everybody.
Everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye, everybody.